Before talking about the Saqqara necropolis discovery, which took place recently, we are going to go more into the south, to Aswan, and to the inauguration of Isis Temple. What about this temple, its importance, its historical parts, why it's important, whether it's going to add to our historic map or no? All this and more with our dear guest via phone, Mr. Ihab Kamel, our historian and Egyptologist. Hello, sir.
Good morning to you.
Good morning. Let's speak immediately about Isis Temple, its inauguration. Tell us first why it's that important, why there is such a historical historical aspect, to be accurate, which is going to be revealed through the re-inauguration or the restoration of Isis Temple in Aswan.
Well, we have to understand that Isis herself, as an ancient Egyptian deity, is linked to one of the most ancient and the most famous mythology in the ancient Egyptian cult, which is the story of Isis and Osiris. So she's considered to be one of the ancient Egyptian great deities.
Yeah.
Actually, the temple of Philae, or the temple of Isis, that's the biggest temple that was ever dedicated to the goddess Isis in Egypt. Despite that, the cult of Isis was not very common in this area during the ancient Egyptian times. Only starting from the Ptolemaic period, the cult of Isis had dominated all the other cults in this area. The island of Philae was considered to be linked to the goddess Isis because in the Greco-Roman period, there was a story or a legend that one of the organs of her husband Osiris was actually buried nearby in one of the islands called the island of Biga. So that's why there were several temples built on the island of Philae. Not only the temple of Isis, we have temples, but they are small temples actually for other deities. But the biggest temple, the mega temple, was that of the goddess Isis. Actually, the temples, they had started building them since a very ancient period, since the time of Thutmose III. And then we had another temple dating back to King Nectanebbu in the 4th century BC. Then the Ptolemies had started building the big temples on the island. Actually, the first one was King Ptolemy II, who was known under the name of Soter, under the name of Philadelphus. And then his successors continued the temple, continued building the temple until it started taking the shape that we know nowadays around the 2nd century BC, and this was during the time of Ptolemy the 12th. Later on, we found that there was a great interest in the whole site and in the temple by the Roman emperors. We had found that lots of Roman emperors actually had added big buildings in this temple, like Claudius, Trajan, Hadrian, Diocletian, and the work had continued until a very late period, until the 4th century AD, and that's when the cult of Isis had spread and dominated any other cult that had existed in this area. Actually, this was the last temple in Egypt that had stayed practicing the ancient Egyptian cult. It stayed practicing the ancient Egyptian cult until the 6th century, or the 7th century AD. Despite that, Christianity had dominated and prevailed all over Egypt, and yet this temple stayed opened as a temple dedicated to the ancient Egyptian deity Isis, challenging the famous decree of Emperor Theodosius in the year 391 AD, which was forcing the Christian religion on all the different parts of the Roman Empire, and yet still this temple had stayed dedicated to the goddess Isis, practicing the cult of the goddess Isis until the time of Emperor Justinian around the 7th century AD, and that's only when Christianity had reached the temple and the temple was converted to a church, and we have a text over there belonging to Bishop
This
Theodorus,
was my coming question, sir, because what you're saying is very interesting. All what you're saying is already documented on the walls of this temple, meaning me as a tourist, whether an Egyptian or a foreigner, whenever I do have a tour guide who is going to take me to this wonderful place, all these stories or all these incidents are already documented there, so I'm going to know everything and in detail about the stories behind building this temple, the ages which were witnessing many events and incidents, and already to be reflected or to be drawn onto the walls of Isis temple?
Yes, of course. The temple itself, it's unique for several events recorded on the walls of the temple, and it has some unique parts that doesn't exist in any other temple. Like, for example, the decree of Bishop Theodorus that dates back to the 7th century, and it's located in the area in the temple which was converted to a church, and you can still see the crosses and the altar and the niche, and that's the only temple in Egypt that has a real church. Maybe the other temples were used as a church, but not really having these these main characteristics of the church located inside it. That's one thing. The second thing, you will find that in this area, for the first time, we can see a chapel dedicated to a Nubian god, the god Mandulis. We don't have any chapels to this deity or pictures for him except in this temple and the temple of Kalabsha. Also, you will find that we have a chapel that was built by Emperor Hadrian. In front of that chapel, you will find something that belongs to modern history, dating to 1884.
Then I can clearly say that Isis temple is a witness which is really telling the stories of many ages, of hundreds of years of our civilization. True?
Exactly, and covering up till the modern times. Until 1884, you will find also a famous text over there which is related to the modern history between Egypt and the Sudan. Actually documenting for the Mahdi revolution, stating the names of the British officers who lost their lives in the Anglo-Egyptian campaign to retrieve back to Sudan.
Sir, let's move, because unfortunately we don't have much time, to what took place in Saqqara and the discoveries which were announced by the Ministry of Antiquities and Tourism, the new trove of treasures in Saqqara. What's the secret in Saqqara, sir? What's this huge necropolis? I mean, under each rock we are going to find something to tell us more about our pharaonic civilization throughout the ages. True?
Well, as we said before, Saqqara, it's the biggest necropolis in Egypt. The area is huge. And since the beginning of the ancient Egyptian history, Saqqara was used as a necropolis since the archaic period. Don't forget that we discovered tombs intact belonging to the second dynasty, like the tomb of the great Vizier Hamaka, and the artifacts are exhibited in the Egyptian Museum. Saqqara did not reveal yet everything that is located over there or to be discovered. There is a lot to be discovered, especially that the ancient Egyptians considered it to be a sacred site, as the local deity which this place takes its name from. It's the god Sokr, the god of the underworld.
Yeah.
And this explains why the excavations had started in Saqqara at a very early age, in the 1880s, by the discovery of the Serapeum, by Mariette, and later on the great jobs of discovery of the tombs and the mastabas. And we cannot forget the great restoration work that was done by Jean-Paul Louer, that took him more than 60 years to restore the funerary complex of Zoser. When he came over there in the early 20th century, there was nothing but the step pyramid. He kept collecting the bits and pieces, and as he was restoring, he had discovered other things like the southern tomb of King Zoser, for example, which gave us a great idea about a royal mastaba. What does it look like? So we still have, Saqqara has got
we
a lot
still
to
have
reveal.
a lot to discover, and inshallah we are going to continue with more discoveries and made by Egyptian hands. The veteran archaeologist and Egyptologist Zahi Hawass told us more about what was going on yesterday. Also, Dr. Khalid Anani, Minister of Antiquities, is always there to follow minute by minute all the new discoveries, not only in Saqqara but all over Egypt. We hope that a day after the other we are going to reveal more secrets of our pharaonic civilization. Always an added value to our program. Mr. Ihab Kamel, our historian and Egyptologist, thank you very much for being with us. Well, by this we come to the end of our breakfast show today. Tomorrow is another episode and another crew. Stay tuned on Nile TV International always for more updates, and for more details please log on to www.nileinternational.net. You were in the company of my dear colleague Hala Al-Hamalawi and myself, Nermina Abdurrahman. It's goodbye for now.